Good day to everybody. And it's another wonderful day and another day for some reflections on our daily devotions. We are in session 12 today, Genesis chapters 35 through 37. We continue now the story of Jacob, and we're going to move a little bit through some focus on Esau. And then finally, after that, we will continue in the story of Jacob, but it primarily will be told through the story of his son Joseph. And that sets the stage to get us down to Egypt by the end of the book, so that we can begin in the book of Exodus with the Israelites in slavery in Egypt. So we begin. And in chapter 35, Jacob returns to the place, in a sense, where his calling started, and that is in Bethel. So God says to him to go to Bethel, and so Jacob obeys. And one of the first things he does is he says to his household, all who were with him, his clan, if you will, he says, put away the foreign gods that are among you and purify yourselves and change your clothes. So we've got, again, I had said in the last session about that really what we've got going on here in these chapters in Genesis is not necessarily a strict belief in monotheism, that there only is one God who exists, but rather henotheism, which is a belief that there is more than one deity out there, but you choose loyalty to only one. So we probably got in Jacob's entourage and his clan of people, which has grown. It's grown over the years. He's become quite wealthy. That there could be those in his camp who are not worshipers of Yahweh, the God of Israel, but maybe worshipers of other gods, or some of these gods have been taken in plunder, perhaps because of their value, but also because to plunder your enemy's gods and take them is a way to say, my God, it's my God can whip your God kind of a thing, right? So, but now they're returning to Bethel, where Jacob first had his dreams from God, his dream of the ladder, staircase descending from heaven. And so it is time to get it together. So it's time to put away everything that is false. It is time to declare loyalty only to this one God, the God that has seen Jacob, been with Jacob through thick and through thin. So that is what they do. And they come to Bethel, and there we hear that there's a death. Rebecca's nurse Deborah dies, and she is buried. And then God appears to Jacob again, and he blesses him, and he reminds him that his name is called now is Israel, and so we'll see references to Jacob as being Israel throughout the text in Genesis. However, we'll still get the name Jacob. It's not gone completely, but he is named Israel, which means one who strives with God and prevails. And he is reminded again of the promise to make of him a great nation, and a company of nations shall come from you, more than one. Kings shall spring from you. And the land, a reminder that he is going to give the land that he has given to him to his offspring and those who come after him. And so Jacob does what he has done throughout his life. He sets up a pillar in a place where there has been some kind of encounter, some kind of divine encounter. And he sets up a pillar made of stone. He pours out an offering on it, a drink offering, pours oil on it. And again, he reaffirms that that place is Bethel, the house of God. Surely the Lord is in this place. Now, So we move in verse 16 to the birth of Benjamin and the death of Rachel, who, remember, is not Jacob's first wife, but his second wife. But Rachel is the one we're told that Jacob loves. Rachel is his favorite. So she is pregnant and she goes into labor, and it's a very difficult labor, we're told. Before she dies, she gives birth to this last son. Before she dies, she names him Benoni, which means child of my sorrows, son of my sorrows. But Jacob, after her death, changes his name to Benjamin, son of my right hand. So this is interesting. To sit at the right hand of anybody in the ancient world is to occupy distinction. And so here is Benjamin, who is the youngest, who is named son of my right hand. What we will find out as we continue on, because it's important to the story, is that the two youngest sons of Jacob, there will be 13 in total, the 12 patriarchs, and if you will, and then Joseph. What you get is that Jacob in his old age will favor his two youngest sons, Benjamin and Joseph. We've seen this before in favoring of children, and that it never leads to anything that is good. So you get starting in verse 22, at the end of verse 22, you get a listing of Jacob's sons. His 12 sons, that is the 12 sons born to him. And so we then come upon the death of Isaac. Jacob comes to his father Isaac. It does not appear from the narrative that Jacob has seen his father since he stole his father's blessing from his brother Esau. So it's been many years. And he comes to his father Isaac. And we're told Isaac dies at 180 years. He breathed his last. He died and was gathered to his people, old and full of days, old and full of days. We've seen this before with Abraham, old and full of days. He lived a wonderfully purposeful life. This doesn't just refer to length of life, but to quality of life, purpose in life. So he dies and he is buried, and notice his sons Esau and Jacob come together and bury him. Just as when Abraham died, Isaac and Ishmael came together to bury their father. So it seems as if, of course, Jacob and Esau have already been reconciled, but how true it is, and sometimes how sad it is that it takes a death to bring about reconciliation between people who are estranged. So it is a reminder to us to make things good while we're all living. That's an important reminder. So now what happens in chapter 36 is very interesting. We get into this long list of Esau's descendants. In a sense, what you've got, even though, again, the story is through Jacob, the chosen line, and then Joseph, then we get to Israel. Esau gets his due here, in a sense. Even though he lost his favored son status, even though God is working through his brother, Jacob, this genealogy is a reminder again that what God has promised Abraham is that even though he's primarily chosen Israel, the nation of Israel, to be the light to the nations, to offer salvation to the world, God still is concerned about all the peoples, and that all of these nations in some ways can trace themselves back to Abraham. And again, this is important in the ancient Near Eastern world. Who you come from, where you come from matters. And so you get this long list of Esau, and just giving due that his generations prosper. He becomes the father of the nation of Edom. The nation of Israel and Edom will not always get along, but Edom is a nation that comes from Esau. But there is this reminder that Esau took his wives and sons. He took wives who were Hittites, who were not part of the clan, and that creates a problem. There's still a reminder. The writer wants to remind that there's a flaw there in reference to Esau and his life. Now, it's interesting. You go in the descendants of Esau in chapter 36. In fact, if you look at in verse 1 and verse 9, you get these are the descendants of Esau. Verse 15, you get these are the clans of the sons of Esau. Verse 20, these are the sons of another descendant of Esau. And then finally in verse 31, you get these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom. So what you may have here is a development of the growth of this nation of Edom. That they start out as a tribe, perhaps much more of a loose confederacy kind of a thing, not as organized, and they grow and they become then a nation with actually a ruler, a monarch. So an indication that this people is growing in number, growing in organization, and in strength. So that's what you essentially get in chapter 36. Now, when we get to chapter 37, Joseph comes on the scene. Jacob settles in the land where his father had lived as an alien in the land of Canaan, and this is the story of the family of Jacob. Notice, it's the story of the family of Jacob, but what we're going to see up through the end of Genesis is that it's really the story of Jacob told by way of the son, or his youngest son, Joseph. And so this is really important. We're going to get a couple of little spots where it's not about Joseph, but for the most part, it's about Joseph. All right. So Joseph is 17 years old. He's a young man. He is shepherding in the flock the flock with his brothers, and he gives a bad report to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. So basically he tattles on his brothers, right? He's the youngest one who tattles. This is a story told throughout the ages and generations. And here we're told in verse 3, now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe with sleeves. It's hard to tell the nature of this robe. It's always come down to us as the coat of many colors, a translation from the King James Version. And emblazoned into our minds with Joseph in the Technicolor Dream Coat, which is a wonderful production, a wonderful drama. But we don't know, is this coat, does it have any kind of color other than white, or is it just fancier than normal? It's a coat with sleeves. Are the sleeves fancy? Are the hems of the sleeves and the hem at the bottom of the garment, are they gilded with gold, dyed thread? Are there tassels on it? It's hard to say exactly what this coat looks like, other than it's special. And to give Joseph this coat would have been a loud and clear statement to Joseph's other sons that Joseph is the favored son, even though he is the youngest. And we're told that when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Another reminder to us that, you can say you love this or you love that person or you love all you want, but love is revealed in our actions. Love is revealed in what we do and what we don't do. So Joseph has a dream. And actually he has two dreams, and he should probably keep those dreams to himself, but he doesn't. You know, just because you know something doesn't mean you have to say it, right? So he goes to his brothers and he tells the dream. And he says, I had this dream. There we were binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around it and bound down to my sheaf. And so the brothers are obviously incensed. You're saying we're going to bow down to you, you, the youngest of all of us, that somehow we're going to serve you. You know, I mean, Joseph's kind of spoiled here, isn't he? I mean, his father has been doting on him. And so, you know, and he knows it. And so he's a young, immature man holding it over his brothers. He has another dream, and he tells them this dream: the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow to the ground before you? We're told his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. That's interesting. Maybe pondering that there might be some truth here. And what we're going to find out at the end of Genesis is that these dreams do come true. But it's not that Joseph therefore had to tell them. In fact, there's nothing in the text that says Joseph has a dream and God comes to him in that dream and says, tell your brothers this dream. So Joseph could have kept it quiet, but it sets up even more animosity that his brothers have for their youngest brother, Joseph. So his brothers are out pasturing the father's flock near Shechem, and Jacob sends his son Joseph to see what they're doing, to take where they are and see if they need anything. You know, when you pasture a flock, and sometimes you do that far away to go easy on your property or the property close to you as far as grazing and all of that. So you go far away to graze them. So Joseph gets sent on an errand of, what do you need? You know, can I go to the store? What can I get for you? And so he manages to find them, not at Shechem, but at a place called Dothan. And when they see Joseph coming from a distance, they conspire, we're told, to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. The dreams. The dreams are what have really have opened up this wound. Let's kill him. Let's throw him into one of the pits, which would have been a cistern, basically to hold water. Let's throw him into one of the pits. And then we'll say that a wild animal has eaten him. But Reuben, who is the oldest, comes and says to his brothers, let's not do that. Let's not take his life, but let's just throw him here in a pit, in a dried cistern, and so that he might be rescued and be returned. So that's what they do. They decide not to kill him. They strip him of his robe, this fancy robe that he has on, and they threw him into a pit. The pit, we're quick to be told the pit is empty and has no water in it, meaning he's still alive. And so they sit down to eat, and they look up and they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, carrying everything that they're carrying. Obviously, there's a trade route that goes from Canaan and places beyond down to Egypt. We know that it was major trade going on. And so Judah then comes up with the bright idea, what profit is going to be to kill this guy, to kill our brother, conceal his blood. You know, as long as we're going to do this, let's make a little profit off of him. So some Ishmaelites, we're told, are coming on the caravan, and they sell Joseph to him They're also referred to as Midianites in verse 28. So there's maybe a mixed group here. They take him out of the pit and they sell him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. They sell him into slavery. So they can feel good about themselves that they didn't kill their brother. But yeah, and you know, what's a little slavery between siblings, right? So they sell Joseph and they take Joseph to Egypt. And so Reuben returns to the pit. He sees Joseph's not in the pit, and so he thinks his brothers have killed him, or whatever they've done with him. But they decide to take his robe and slaughter a goat. They dip the robe in the sleeves in the blood of the goat, and they take it to their father and say, "Here's what we have found. By the way, we're not sure if it's Joseph's robe." Well, of course they're sure, not only because they did the deed, but they envied the robe. But they want to come off as being not concerned about it. We're not really concerned about this gift you gave him. So we don't know for sure. Well, obviously Jacob recognizes it, and he mourns. And he mourns and he mourns, and he won't be comforted by his children. He says, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." So Sheol is translated the grave. It also refers to in the Old Testament as the place, the underworld, where all the dead go. And it will, later on, we'll get some different understandings of eternity, but right now, this seems to be the view of eternity. It's certainly not emphasized in the early books of the Old Testament. We'll get more to the conversations about Sheol and the grave and eternity and resurrection later on as the text presents itself. But right now, he's just saying, "I'm going to go down to the grave to my son." There could be a sense here that there is some eternity for the two of them. Or he's just saying, "I'm going to die like my son. I will, and when I die, I will not be comforted." And so while he is mourning, we're told at the end of 37 that the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt, sold him in slavery in Egypt to Potiphar, who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Potiphar is a person high up in Pharaoh's court. And so Joseph is sold to be his slave, to be his servant. Now, a couple of things that should be mentioned is that back up to verse 35, we're told that while Israel, that is Jacob, lived in the land, Reuben, who's the oldest son, went and basically slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah. Remember, Bilhah has borne Jacob a couple of sons. Again, but there is no mention of this other than to say that Jacob hears of it. And that's it. Are there no consequences for this? Because it really is an embarrassment to his father. Again, we're in a context where Bilhah just unfortunately doesn't count. But there's no immediate consequences, right? You remember the rape of Dinah and the consequences there? We're not told that there are consequences, but there will be actually for Reuben in chapter 49 of Genesis, when Jacob, who was on his deathbed, gives all of his sons their blessing. It's there in offering a blessing to Reuben that comes out to be more of a curse than a blessing. So that will be dealt with, but it's just not there right now. A couple other things in conclusion is that, again, we see the preference for the youngest in this narrative, and this again overturns all the customs of the ancient Near East, where it's the older sons, it's the firstborn who are given special status, and yet God seems to make the decision to work unexpectedly through the younger younger sons, and God will continue to do the unexpected, work in ways that are unexpected. So it's probably at the end of the day done that way, so that we human beings who like to take credit for things we haven't done, we can't say, look, we did this for God, but rather it's God who was working. God's the major actor in the drama of human history and in the offer of salvation, and you and I have the privilege of cooperating in it. But at the end of the day, it's not our achievement. So that I think is important for us to remember. And one other thing I want to mention about clothing, we see Joseph's robe. He gets this robe, a statement of his father's favor. The robe is torn off him. Statement of his brother's rejection of him. Joseph will go down to Egypt and have royal clothes because he will move up in Pharaoh's court. And so for Joseph, the transitions of his life are marked by clothing. Interesting, because we will get in the New Testament, in particular Paul, book of Revelation, that the mark of God's people is the clothing, not literal clothing, but the clothing of faithfulness. Put on the things that are good. Put on the character that God expects. Take off the things that keep you away from God. The vices, if you will, that are not faithful. So clothing is more than covering in the Bible often. It is meant to say something more, something deeply spiritual. So let's keep all that in mind. All right, we are through with chapter 32 through 34. And now 35 and 37 for today. And tomorrow we will have Genesis 38 through 40. We get an unfortunate event with Judah and Tamar, and we'll get to that. And then we also have some more drama with Joseph and Potiphar's wife. And then we're going to get more dreams in chapter 40. And these dreams will actually not get Joseph in trouble, but will help him. All right, friends, let me pray us out. Gracious God, thank you for, again, an opportunity to study your word and to be in it. Thank you for the good examples of people and their faithfulness and the examples that we are not to follow. We thank you for your working in the midst of these folks, and that same presence and that same movement is with us today. So in this day, may we be faithful to you in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. See you tomorrow.